There's something strangely dangerous about a person who never doubts themselves. Not because they're powerful, not because they're evil, but because certainty can blind the human mind faster than ignorance itself. Psychology has discovered something uncomfortable over the years. The people most convinced they are intelligent are often the least aware of their own limitations. And the truly intelligent? They usually carry a quiet tension inside them, a constant internal dialogue, a subtle voice asking, "What if I'm wrong?" That single question changes everything. Because intelligence is not memory, it's not vocabulary, it's not sounding sophisticated in arguments. Real intelligence is cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt, update, question, and rethink. And history is filled with people who failed precisely because they believed they had already figured everything out. The terrifying part is that most people never notice this happening to them. Tonight we're going through 5 real stories involving athletes, politicians, business leaders, scientists, and ordinary people whose minds revealed something profound about human psychology. And by the end of this video, you may start noticing these signs everywhere, including in yourself. In 1998, a man named John Rusnak became one of the most dangerous employees inside Allied Irish Bank. At first, nobody suspected anything unusual. He appeared confident, calm, highly intelligent. He spoke with authority, and people trusted him because certainty often looks like competence. Rusnak worked as a currency trader, and over time he started making increasingly reckless decisions. But here's what made the situation psychologically fascinating. Even after losing massive amounts of money, he refused to believe his strategy was flawed. Instead of stopping, he doubled down, then doubled down again. Why? Because of something psychologists call overconfidence bias, the cognitive distortion where people overestimate the accuracy of their own knowledge and judgments. The human brain hates admitting uncertainty, especially when ego becomes attached to being the smart one. Rusnak eventually hid losses worth nearly $700 million. Not because he lacked intelligence entirely, but because he lacked self-doubt. And this pattern appears everywhere. Research from psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger revealed something deeply ironic. People with lower competence in a domain often overestimate their abilities because they lack the very skills required to recognize their mistakes. This became known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. In simple terms, sometimes the less a person understands, the more certain they become. Meanwhile, experts tend to sound less absolute because they see complexity others cannot see. That's why highly intelligent people often say things like, "It depends. I could be wrong. There's more nuance here." Not because they're weak, because they can actually see the full picture. That exact ability to question yourself can completely transform a human life. In the late 1990s, heavyweight boxer George Foreman was considered finished, too old, too slow, outdated. The younger generation laughed at him, but something psychologically fascinating separated Foreman from many athletes whose careers collapse. He adapted. Earlier in his life, Foreman was aggressive, emotionally explosive, and stubborn inside the ring. But after losing to Muhammad Ali in the famous "The Rumble in the Jungle," something changed psychologically. He began reevaluating himself. Instead of protecting his ego, he questioned his assumptions. That shift transformed his entire career. Years later, he returned and became the oldest heavyweight champion in history. Psychologists call this trait cognitive adaptability, the ability to update your behavior based on evidence. This is one of the strongest markers of intelligence. But many people do the opposite. They cling to old beliefs even when reality clearly disproves them. Why? Because changing your mind feels psychologically painful. Neuroscience shows that challenges to deeply held beliefs activate areas of the brain associated with physical discomfort and threat processing. To the ego, being wrong can feel like danger. And that's why some people would rather destroy relationships, careers, and opportunities than simply say, "I was mistaken." Foreman became stronger because he learned how to revise himself. Rigid people rarely evolve. Adaptive people do. And sometimes, the danger becomes even bigger when entire groups start oversimplifying reality together. In 2001, executives at Enron believed they had mastered the future of business. The company looked unstoppable. Financial media praised them. Investors worshiped them. Employees believed they were geniuses. But internally, the leadership culture had a massive psychological flaw: extreme oversimplification. Complex financial realities were reduced into simple narratives. We're too innovative to fail. The market just doesn't understand us. Critics are jealous. This kind of thinking creates what psychology calls cognitive closure, the desire for simple, definite answers in situations that are actually complex. Human beings love cognitive closure because ambiguity creates anxiety. Simple explanations feel emotionally satisfying. But reality is rarely simple, and intelligent thinking usually sounds more nuanced than emotional thinking. The collapse of Enron became one of the biggest corporate disasters in history, not because nobody was smart, but because too many people stopped questioning complexity. This happens socially too. Some people reduce human beings into labels, reduce relationships into formulas, reduce life into simplistic, black and white conclusions. Good people always win. Successful people never fail. If someone disagrees with me, they're stupid. But psychology consistently shows that intelligent thinkers tolerate ambiguity better than rigid thinkers. They can hold two competing ideas in their minds without panicking. That ability changes everything. And one of the biggest reasons some minds keep evolving while others become mentally trapped is curiosity. When Richard Feynman was a child, his father used to take him on walks and ask strange questions about birds, nature, and the universe. Not to impress him, but to train curiosity itself. Years later, Feynman became one of the most brilliant physicists in modern history. But what made him extraordinary wasn't just intelligence. It was relentless curiosity. Feynman constantly questioned assumptions other people accepted automatically. And psychology shows something fascinating about curiosity. Curiosity activates the brain's reward system, increases dopamine activity, and strengthens long-term learning pathways. In other words, the brain literally becomes more intelligent when curiosity stays active. But many adults slowly lose this trait. They stop asking why. They stop exploring, stop reading deeply, stop examining opposing perspectives. Eventually, they begin confusing familiarity with understanding. That's dangerous because exposure is not mastery. Seeing motivational quotes online all day does not make someone wise. Watching debates does not make someone analytical. Real intelligence requires intellectual humility, the willingness to admit there are things I still don't understand. Feynman once said, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." That single sentence may explain human psychology better than entire textbooks. And perhaps the clearest sign of shallow thinking appears when a person loses the ability to examine themselves honestly. There was a period in Adriano's football career where the world believed he could become one of the greatest players alive. His power was terrifying. His talent was obvious. But over time, his performances collapsed, and people around him noticed a painful pattern. After poor performances, blame often moved outward: the coaches, the pressure, the media, the circumstances. Now reality matters here. Life does contain unfairness, and external factors absolutely matter. But psychology shows that people who never analyze their own role in failure stop growing psychologically. This relates to something called metacognition, the ability to observe and evaluate your own thinking and behavior. Highly intelligent people engage in self-analysis constantly, not self-hatred, not obsessive guilt, self-observation. They ask, what pattern am I repeating? What am I refusing to see? How might I be contributing to this problem? Without that process, improvement becomes impossible. And this is why some people remain trapped in identical life cycles for decades. Same arguments, same failures, same emotional reactions, different year, same psychology. Growth begins the moment self-reflection becomes stronger than ego protection. The frightening thing about intelligence is that it's invisible at first. Someone can sound confident and still think shallowly. Someone can speak softly while possessing extraordinary depth. Psychology makes one thing very clear. Intelligence is not the absence of mistakes. It's the ability to recognize them. It's adaptability, curiosity, nuance, self-awareness, and the courage to question yourself even when your ego resists it. And maybe the most dangerous sentence a human being can believe is this: I already know enough. Because the moment curiosity dies, growth usually dies with it. And the people who continue evolving through life are rarely the loudest people in the room. They're usually the ones still learning. Sometimes the greatest football legends don't lose because of skill. They lose because, for a few terrifying seconds, pressure disconnects them from themselves. The crowd disappears. The instincts disappear. Even identity disappears. And now, another psychological story is about to appear on your screen. The Maradona Effect: Why Flawed Legends Feel More Real Than Perfect Influencers. Watch it now. And if you enjoy deep psychological football stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.